within the Hispanic community in America.
You know what? I think President Ronald Reagan said it best. Freedom is not passed on through the blood. Freedom has to be passed on from generation to generation. And if you lose it for a very, very long time.
The LIBRE Initiative nationwide advocating for capitalism, advocating for free markets, individual liberty, people to exercise their talents, exercise their skills, to be able to accumulate wealth, retain as much wealth as possible, trying to push back the onerous, intrusive nature of government that wants to constantly stick its hands into the pockets of working people, because after all, it's working people that generate the wealth that the state depends on in order to, fulfill its fantasies and all these programs that they want to pay for. So it's you, the working people. You work for a living. You got a job. Your spouse has a job. You're trying to pay bills. The government wants you to be stupid enough to vote more statists into Washington, to take more of your money away to pay for their fantasies and programs. So we're here advocating for the working people. You want a true advocacy for working people? People who advocate for less government, less intrusive government. Those are the people that you should be seeking out. People like Dan Garza at the LIBRE Initiative. All right, so how are you getting the message out, dude? What are you doing? I know you're traveling a lot and talking to all these groups and organizations and union groups and even some of the enemies, people who advocate for the state and want bigger programs and all that type of stuff. How are you getting this message out, dude?
Well, we've been very fortunate to get terrific support from, Americans who believe that, the free market system is not perfect. It doesn't give you equal results, but it gives you the best results. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're driving. And we now have offices that we've opened up in Miami, in Denver, Colorado, in Los Angeles, in Northern Virginia, in Roslyn, and of course here in South Texas. That's where it's based out of and headquartered. So we travel around the country and we get on radio interviews. We do television shows, both in English and Spanish. We get on print. We have our own online, the LibreInitiative.com. We do live events. We've had events with governors, with senators, congressmen. We're very excited about the movement and the way it's been received and the way it's growing.
I'm glad you're doing the media outreach, and you mentioned Spanish media. And I'm very familiar with Spanish media. And I saw you on the Univision national desk these past few days.
Yes.
Some of your family chiming in saying, hey, you could be working that anchor chair. I said, no, he's not liberal enough. He's not an advocate for statism. Yeah, they will never give him that gig. He opens up his mouth at the first hint of him advocating for individual liberty, freedom, retention of wealth, capitalism. They're going to slap him out of there. Spanish media is key, dude.
But you know what?
I'm blown away how in Spanish media they advocate for anything, everything socialist. Unapologetically, do they have?
Well, and I'm unapologetic about driving, individualism, about driving free markets. I honestly, truly believe in the proposition that Thomas Jefferson expressed in the Declaration of Independence, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And capitalism saying, we don't know what does it for you. You figure it out. And it's that freedom where the person then, strikes out on his own and takes risks and becomes an entrepreneur, where he creates wealth. He creates wealth for others and economic opportunities and gets other people, to be involved in his endeavors and his dreams. And then those people strike out on their own, achieving their dreams. Mm-hmm. So the government doesn't decide for you. You decide for yourself.
Man, I'm convinced that these are values that are deep-rooted in the hearts of all the Hispanic, all
We're just
Americans.
Reminding them of those principles.
Actually, you're reminding them through media that is, I believe, very, very leftist, Spanish-speaking media. The major networks, Univision, Telemundo, all these guys that are doing nothing but spoon-feeding socialism through their news magazines.
I believe it's all about the money. It's like because they take corporate dollars, they have to be politically sensitive. And in that sensitivity, sometimes they go too far. And it's not really because a lot of sure, some of them lean left. But they are very conservative. Individually, they are very conservative. The owners and the people who are a part of the Hispanic media.
Then why are they trying to keep the people stupid then?
Corporate dollars. They have to be politically sensitive to everything.
Well, says who?
Says the corporate people, who don't want to offend other folks, with this.
They believe that the only way
intolerant message.
They believe the only way they can sell their goods and wares and products and sodas and food is by being, because they're not apolitical, dude. They're advocating.
No, some of them are very leftist. That's true. They're very progressive, believe in collectivist policies. They're
Absolutely.
well-intentioned.
Yeah.
They honestly believe that through a collectivist society we can do better, but actually that's what impoverishes us the most. When government begins to grow, the burden on the private sector can, then stifles any kind of creativity, innovation, the growth and true value and wealth.
It's the very lie that either they or their parents ran from in Latin American
You're
countries.
absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And yet they come here and they're still advocating for that, or they're still being spooned for that. And I know that, I mean, you can see it in the numbers. Not everybody's is drinking from that cup. So
no, and that's what we're reminding them of, that model does not work.
Yeah.
That model of statism, of progressivism, of collectivism does not work. It is the individual. And if the growth in size and scope of government continues to grow the way it is going now, there is going to be proportionate diminishment of individual liberties.
All it is, have you told these people that all it is, it's just control over them by allowing the government to control them? And that when we are
free, we prosper. And when we are less free, we prosper less.
Yeah, you take money from the government, you take a check from the government, you owe the government. Yeah, the borrower is a slave to the lender. You owe the government for the rest of your life.
But even worse than that is that now you are working for the purposes of the government and not your own.
On top of that.
And so you lose liberty. And that's what we're talking about, economic freedom, where you take, you use your own capital to advance what you desire, whether it be charitable, whether it be cultural, or even spiritual, ministerial, if you want.
Now, some people might think that they don't make enough money as middle class or lower middle class in order to provide for themselves and their kids. Like, I'm here to tell you to testify. Hallelujah. My dad, less than a 6th grade education in Mexico. I'm first generation American. By the grace of God that he saw and wanted something better from. He loved me enough to say, you know what, Mexico is a lie. Like, Mexico is beautiful, but I'm not talking about the culture and music or food. Mexico as a government structure is a lie.
But lately Mexico has actually been liberalizing, and they're at a 5% growth.
Because they're moving toward what?
Towards economic freedom,
capitalism.
Hello. And we've gone away from it, and we're at a 1.5% growth.
Yeah, back then
we're going opposite directions.
Yeah, and back then he wanted something better. But even as a hardworking man who never took any assistance from the government and did whatever it took to feed my ungrateful mouth, whatever he needed to do in order to provide for me, he did. And I did the numbers over the span of a lifetime. Had he been able to retain more of what he provided to the government as far in taxation, and even been able to retain some of the wealth in his assets that were completely lost and disappeared, evaporated by government intervention in the markets that led to this economic collapse and a few years ago, he would still have more than enough money to provide for himself because he's bedridden, and not by choice. He's bedridden. He'd still be working at 71 right now if he had a choice. But
doesn't it say something that China has moved towards an economic freedom model, and they're at
Cuba is moving
9% growth in the past 10 years?
We had some
Brazil 7% growth.
We had some people
Russia,
from
7% growth.
From the Russians giving us an example of how not to tax investments,
and
capital
gains
for them. Investments,
and they are booming while we are headed to exactly the opposite.
People
direction.
Wake up, folks. This is America. These are the principles, these are the values that led to the prosperity that we all enjoy. The reason they're still coming to America, they're drowning in the river. They're dying in La Quinena, in ranch country, to get here because this is still the land of opportunity. This is what we're fighting for. This is what we want to preserve. You need to be a part of this. These are the values that you need to educate yourself of and pass these on to your kids, because what we have right now in Washington is a culture that advocates for the opposite, that wants to tear this down. The LIBRE Initiative had a new poll, or I guess, is this the first poll that you guys produced?
This is the first poll that we've done. Right. Yep, that's exactly 1,500 Hispanic and Latinos across the country.
Dan Garza is the president of the LIBRE Initiative. He's my guest in the studio, and we're talking about some polling data that they produced this past week. It was Hispanic-centric across the country. Let's talk about some of the data. How did you accumulate the data? What markets did you look at? What can you tell me?
500 nationally, just randomly, and then we oversampled in specific states. 100 people in New York, Florida, Texas, California, Colorado, Nevada, and New Mexico. We felt those were important states because there was high concentrations of Hispanics, and then there was high percentages of Hispanics in the other Southwest states. So we felt that was a very good crosscut of the Hispanic community.
The slight oversampling in the Hispanic-heavy states like Texas, I suspect some folks in the Valley also got that call. And
sure, and likely voters, both in English and Spanish.
Okay.
2% prefer to only speak in Spanish.
Okay, so you parsed it that much then?
Absolutely. It was likely voters who have voted before and are likely to vote again.
Okay. Over what period of time? Was it recent?
This was from the middle of March to about the 15th to the 20th.
Okay. Now, Dan interviewed yesterday on the morning show and shared a few of the numbers. Not surprising, almost two-thirds, they like the Democrat Party. They like the president. You want to be more specific on what they said in the polling data?
We asked them straight up, who are you going to vote for in this election to get the pulse of politically where they're at. 59% they said they were going to re-elect President Obama.
Okay, these are likely
31%,
voters.
yes. 31% were going to vote for the Republican nominee.
Just curious, you going to do another poll later in the year?
We will.
Okay. Do you know when? Closer?
Maybe in about 3 to 4 months.
Okay. Yeah, that would be important to gauge this.
Yeah, and that result was very interesting. And we'll talk about that when we come back after the break.
800-580-8255. Saturday open phones on News Talk 710 KURV. I'm Sergio